Welcome to Chapter 1 of Module 3. So we're going to talk about governance structures in relation to project management. So let's go ahead and dive into that. All right, so when we dive into this, if I can get my slide to adjust, there we go. We have different levels of organizational project management strategies, and each one has a unique framework. So we have the difference of mindset. Who controls it? And sometimes your organization might be brand new to this, so it's kind of in the air. But then you have the more well-established organizations that might actually have a project management office that runs all the projects of your company. And there's things in between, which we'll discuss in the next couple slides. So how your company does that is based on its strategy because of how they execute things. Now, you're probably used to the hierarchical organization right now. So we have different levels. We have projects, we have programs, and portfolios. So portfolios, they're comprised of projects and programs because they're at the top. They're the ones with the 30,000-foot view. They see everything that's going on. And usually a project management office will be at that portfolio level. They're taking a look at everything. And they will tell project managers what project they're doing, and they'll be the go-to resource. Now, these projects that are under a portfolio are not necessarily related. They might be grouped into a program, and then that program is managed by this at the portfolio level. Or it will be done at a lower level. So programs and subprograms, these programs are always related in how they're managed and what they're doing. So if anything related to, let's say, IT, there might be an IT project or program manager. So anything that's a IT related project will fall under this person. This person is overseeing the various projects that are going on. And then at the lowest level, we have the projects themselves. They could be anything. It could be about adding an addition onto the building, renovating office space, deciding interior design with that renovation. You can have all sorts of projects for different reasons. You just have to remember they have to be unique. They cannot be routine operational things, because projects are meant to be as an endeavor, and then it ends, and then it's handed over to operations to continue. But we have to remember that projects are the lowest level, and that's where you're looking to become a project manager. This certification, the PMP, is a project management professional, as you already know. But there are higher levels. There's the program management professional, and then even higher, there's a portfolio management professional. So let's go ahead and take a look at the project management office. Now, I've mentioned this so many times before, but these are really where you're going to get a lot of support depending on your organization. So there's supportive, they'll offer support. They won't control anything. They just say they'll help you get what you need. So they're usually a good location to go for those items like templates. Let's say you have to write a project charter. Well, they'll probably have a template for this, and all you got to do is fill in the boxes. They also have the good practices that your company has learned over the years. And they may offer training, such as, maybe you advance on to the next level in your project management and going for that program. They might offer that level of training for you. Or maybe you want to get into IT projects, but you've been doing construction. So you might need to learn more agile skills, and they can provide that training. And also that lesson learned. What did other project managers run into and figure out, okay, this didn't work, but now we're trying it and going over, and this is actually what we did, and it worked perfectly. Or it worked, but not as well as it could have, and we could learn from that. But the next type of PMO is controlling. They'll have some moderate control on your projects or programs, whatever level you're at, and they generally require compliance with the way they want things done. Now, they're not as controlling as a directive level, but they have certain way things need to be done. And so that might be compliance or the frameworks or methodology used. They might require specific templates used for certain things. And governance, they're making sure that you're following company policies and procedures. No one knows all the company's policies and procedures. So they can help you by guiding you down the right path. And you might learn of something new that you didn't know your company actually did. Now, directive. These are they're I don't want to say a micromanager, but they are highly involved in your project. They might even be directing the management of these projects. So you've all probably experienced a manager that was on you and telling you how to do certain things, even though you know what you're doing. Well, the PMO as a directive PMO can do that, but it varies by your organization. Now, agile projects are slightly different. There's most of the time they're supportive in agile projects. They're measuring that effectiveness and they're comparing it to maybe other types of project methods that could be used, and they're usually inviting people to do it so they can get the agile teams to buy into it. If you are bought into the project, you're going to have more skin in the game. You're going to be more willing and more dedicated to that project. And sometimes you can become indispensable, or the project management can become indispensable with the amount of support and guidance they can give. Now, of course, we can get a little bit more where the project management office is getting to the point where they're controlling and directing. Well, this is a little bit at odds with Agile. As you know from how we've discussed Agile is pretty much a wild animal when it comes to it. You could be going down one path, and at the end of the sprint or the end of the story or whatever your time frame of doing a certain task, you're going 90 degrees down another direction, or even going 180. Agile is just so wild. But it's a project management office can be good, but usually it's at odds when they're trying to control and direct. Because Agile needs that reflection and refinement and tailoring within the limits of your project. Now, they, of course, may be controlling and saying, hey, you have to stay within the scope of your project, and you have to meet your objectives, keeping you on track, which is good. We can get off track pretty easily. But they can also go as far as mandating external compliance that either you or the customer may not know of, or maybe you've dismissed as not being relevant. So it's always good to have an external view to take a look and make sure you're doing the right things. And your project manager can also, or not the project manager, the project management office can also make sure that your client or your customer or the product owner stays involved. They may not understand what Agile is, and they may say, okay, here's a project, and disappear on you, right? Well, that doesn't help in Agile because we need to know what's going on. So the PMO can make sure that the product owner, the customer, the stakeholder, whoever it is there to give further guidance. And so they also can be supportive of Agile once the PMO knows what's going on with your project and more about Agile itself. So how do we escalate when we have problems in our projects? Because sometimes we're taken out of the regular chain of authority or chain of command to do these projects. And we'll talk about matrix structures and stuff like that, which will make things a little bit more complicated, but it's not difficult to understand. So when we need to escalate things, we're going to try doing the normal way we would escalate things. Bring it up to our boss, seeing if it's even a problem maybe first before we even escalate. Can we handle it ourselves? But if we can't handle it ourselves and we've met that threshold for escalation, well, we might have to go to our boss or to a designated individual or the project management office. And they'll have a way of maybe taking care of it for us or telling us what needs to happen for the next step. And of course, there might be a hierarchy where we need to go to a functional manager, accounting, marketing, sales, whatever manager we need to go to. And hopefully they could solve it, because we don't want to keep escalating. But if it's something that needs to keep going, well, we need to keep escalating to the higher level, because we don't have any other option. We need the problem solved. Hopefully, your problem is solved before you get all the way up to, let's say, the chief executive officer. But what are some reasons to escalate? Well, we have these strategic misalignments. If it's not strategic to your company, there's a problem there. And how to fix that, it might take an executive level or your project sponsor to address this issue. A functional manager may not be able to deal with this or be able to handle this according to the company's way of doing things. If you need an override or an exception or a waiver to an established procedure, well, you may not have that authority, but somebody above you might, and always get it in writing, saying that you can do a variance or an exception or an override or a waiver of a certain process. That way, it's not on you, it's on the person who made that decision. Now, ethics and legal violations, legal, that's pretty straightforward. Ethics, ethics are not necessarily illegal things. They're just the way our society has accepted the right practice. Like, for example, our society kind of accepts speeding when we're driving. But if we speed excessively, then it becomes illegal. That's kind of an ethics thing. Like, don't speed through a school zone. Well, yes, fines are usually doubled in speed zones. But ethics, that could be in your company. You might have to consult a office, your ethics office in your company or something, to get their opinion. Security and safety, this one, safety is number one, right? We want everybody to be safe and go home to their loved ones every day. Security, we want to make sure the company assets are protected. And that could be electronically, that could be physically, that could be any other way to protect company assets. If there's a problem there, you might need to escalate, let's say, to a security office, to a senior manager, or whoever it is that can take care of this. Policy and procedure violations, depending on the level it is, might depend on the level of manager you need to escalate to. A policy or procedure violation might be able to be handled by a functional manager, unless there's some injury, which might fall under safety. But, that depends on your company's culture and stuff like that. Customer loss risk. If you're going to lose a customer, usually an executive or a senior manager needs to be involved in that, because you're a project manager. Yes, you have the ability to interface with customers, but that customer may just need the reassurance of somebody senior in your company, such as a vice president of such and such, or the chief executive officer, the chief operations officer, or maybe the director of sales, or somebody to make them feel good and keep with the company. Now, anything also that changes in your project, that could increase the risk of failure, you might need to talk to somebody outside and above you, because we want our projects to succeed. Now, don't get me wrong. Not every project that you do will succeed. There's a lot that will fail. If you have a track record of 20% that fail, you're probably a good project manager. I would say you are a good project manager, because some projects are just not designed right to succeed. So, project changes that risk failure or increase your failure, you need to talk to somebody and see why they're making this change, and maybe you can negotiate the change. So here's a discussion question. I know this is a video, so go ahead and take a few seconds and then play the video again and figure out and check your answer that you came up with. So, how does organizational structure influence or constrain a project? So go ahead and take a few seconds, pause the video, and then when you think you have the answer or know you have the answer, go ahead and resume the video. All right. So the answer to the question is B. It defines the project manager's authority. So, yeah, when we come to our structure, that's going to influence and constrain our project in regards to our project manager's authority. Not every organization, when you're a project manager, is going to allow you to make certain decisions, but other ones may. They may give you full and total authority over your project. Other organizations may say you have to ask for everything. And, you can work in both environments. So here's some structures that I mentioned earlier that talk about we can talk about our project manager's authority, since we just had a question on that. So if we just have a simple structure for our company, so you can think maybe a small company that doesn't have a whole lot of management or whatnot, and is, let's say, a family-owned company, or they may not give you any authority, or they may give you a little bit of authority to make the decisions you need. And whoever manages your budget is probably going to be the owner or the operator of that function. So you're basically borrowing money from wherever that you don't control to do your project. Now, functional. So think about a company that now has departments: accounting, sales, marketing, supply, all the different departments there. Well, if you're at this level, you still have little or no authority when it comes to your projects. And your budget is controlled by the functional manager. And that functional manager may be your boss for that project. So think about, let's say, an accounting system update, upgrade, I should say, moving from one software package to another. That's a project, switching between software packages, because there's a conversion of data, making sure everything's good. But that may not affect everything else in the company, so it would be under the control of a functional manager for the budget. Now, multi-divisions. So let's say you have a company you're at a company that has multiple locations, and they call them divisions or whatnot. Still, it's kind of the same as a functional one. It's just the divisions are bigger, maybe regional divisions or something like that. So it's no change between functional and multi-divisional. But when we get into matrix, this is where you have more authority, especially in a strong matrix. You're going to have moderate authority to high authority in these. And the resources you need, you're going to have pretty much access to whatever you need. There may be some things you need to ask people for, but if you need something, you're generally going to get it because you're the one that controls the budget. So you can say, hey, I'm going to need this resource. I'm going to pay for this resource so you don't have to pay it out of your budget. A functional manager might say, sure, because I don't have to pay for that person out of my budget, or I don't have to pay for this or that or whatever. So it might be easier. But also depends on the time of year and other factors that might affect those various functional areas of your company. If you're at the end of the fiscal year, it might be hard to get somebody from accounting. If you're about to get into a large sales push, you might not be able to get somebody from sales until a little bit later. Or you might not be able to get the ideal person you need. On the other hand of matrix is the weak. Well, you have low authority. You're going to have to fight to get resources because the availability of these resources is very low. And you're probably going to have to answer to a functional manager, and they're going to control the budget. Now, we have that in between, of course, and we call that a balanced matrix structure. So you're going to have low to moderate authority as a project manager. You're going to have about the same access to resources, low to moderate. And who controls the budget? You might control the budget, but it might be partly controlled by somebody else. So you're going to have to learn how to negotiate and maybe collaborate with a functional manager or the owner of the project, or whoever you need to. But then we have companies that are project orientated. And this is where you are, I'll just put it this way. You're essentially a god when it comes to your project authority. If you need it, you will get it as a resource, and you control your budget. Now, that's a project orientated company or organization. There are companies out there that are like this. So don't feel like this is something that you'll never see. A lot of companies are kind of going this way with maybe a part of their company because they have so many projects going on. They just say, okay, you're the project manager, you have the authority. Virtual, we've had this past year where everybody went virtual. It's going to be tough because in virtual teams, generally you have team members that are all around the world or geographically separated from you. So you're going to have low to moderate authority over your team because they may be splitting their time between you and their actual department. Resource availability, because it's virtual, it's going to be kind of low to moderate on getting the resources you need, especially if you need physical resources because, well, your team's virtual. So who's going to need that resource and where are they going to need it? It's not like you can, but you can ship something from, let's say, the United States to Germany so that your team member in Germany can work on it. But is that practical? So when it comes to the budget, it's usually a mix also where you control it and somebody else controls it. So you might have to collaborate or negotiate with that counterpart. Now, hybrid. This one is mixed across the board here. It depends on the project and how the project is set up. So you might have some authority in certain areas, but not in others for your project. Same thing with resource availability. It's kind of a mixed bag on the type of availability of resources that you have access to. You might be able to get something with a snap of a finger, and the other one you might have to put in a request like a month ahead of time to get it. It really depends. And with the hybrid, it's also a mix on who is controlling the budget. So now the project management office is almost like project orientated. The company has realized they have projects and they need to establish people who can oversee those projects through an office or a department. So it's called an office in the PMP guide, but it could be a department at your company. So as a project manager, you're going to have high or total authority. And the same thing with resource availability. You're going to have almost total authority to get these resources that you need. So it might be just putting in a request to the project management office and then they will get it for you. Usually there is some senior manager or maybe even an executive who's over the project management office. So they have the authority to say to whatever area that needs to be told to give you the resource. And the project manager generally controls their budget, but there is some oversight from the PMO office because they're the ones who gave you the money. So they're going to want to know what's going on and they may check up on you with this. But, essentially you control your budget. So what we can do here is another question. So the project manager meets with the team member's functional manager to gather input before the project manager addresses the individual's inadequate performance. What type of structure does this organization use? So go ahead and pause this video, and then once you have the answer, go ahead and start playing it again. Okay, so this project manager is probably operating under a strong matrix. So the people on your team do report to a functional manager. They're on loan to you. And in a matrix structure, most of the time the people in the functional departments are on loan, at least administratively, to a project 90% of the time, 75% of the time. But they're doing their functional areas work while under your project. But they also, when you're done with a project and they have nowhere to go, they go back to the functional manager because that's who actually is their manager. And then they get loaned out to another project. So matrix, these individuals on your team technically have two bosses, you and their functional manager. So yeah, strong matrix is the correct answer for this one. So project governance. Well, we have to make sure that all our projects align with the company's strategies. Now, the objectives should be advancing towards that strategy. It might be a roundabout way to get to that strategy, but that is what the executives and the senior managers are for. That's their decisions to set up this project this way that you're working on. Now, the project management office, they're the ones that are absolutely going to make sure that the project is aligned with the company strategy. But it takes time for them to make sure that. So you might be working with them to make this charter, and then you're going to have the oversight from these levels. It might, like I said, the executive, the senior manager, project management office. You're going to have this oversight to make sure your project is still supporting the strategy of the company. If your company's strategy changes and your project no longer supports that strategy, I would expect your project to be canceled because it has no value anymore because it's not supporting the company, their company's plan. So the further governance, we're going to make sure that your project and how you're governed complies with the values, norms, rules, culture, and structure of your company. Because that's what you're used to working for that company. So we got to make sure this project is supporting that. So we have various areas here. Establish, assess, governance framework, communicate, governance up and down. So tell your people how you're going to be governed as a team, and let your people above you know that that's how you're complying with that, or you need them to support that type of governance. If there's a structure change to your team or even the company, you should know about this and ask questions so you fully understand what's going on, because that may impact your project. You got to validate your resources too, your quality and your quantity of your resources. The way your project is governed may dictate how you ask for resources or how you receive resources, or how you're to return the resources. Now, of course, we have the integrate, monitor, and control. That's the actual doing of this governance here. And our governance can also put influence on external parties. And our governance can also help us dealing with risk and how we escalate concerns or issues or challenges to the next level. There might be a written policy on how you do that. And of course, we have the phase gates. These are essentially milestones for your project and how to close your project. There might be a specific way your company closes projects. It might be with a party, a ceremony. It could be just, you tell everybody, okay, we're done, go back to your work section, depending on your company. So it's governance. It's not really a big burden on you because you're used to it already with your company. If you go to a new company, it might take some time to learn how they do their governance, but it should be pretty quick because most companies kind of govern the same when it comes to projects. But it doesn't mean there isn't some quirks there. So we have some code of ethics with the Project Management Institute. So when you agree or make an application for the exam, I believe they're going to have you agree to the code of ethics and the professional conduct for a project management professional. So if you become a member, you're going to be expected to agree to this to become a member. And if you have a certification, every time you renew your certification, you're going to renew your agreement to follow the code of ethics and professional conduct. And we also have volunteers within the Project Management Institute. So if you hold a volunteer role, then you're expected to maintain and uphold these ethics and professional conduct. So they're mandatory for being a certification holder, but they're also aspirational. This is where we want to go. So they're not difficult, but they're there to motivate you and make you better. So their central values is responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. These are all terms that we've probably already gone through, so many people telling us about. We want to learn and uphold the policies, rules, regulations, and laws. That's our responsibility as individuals to follow the guidelines set down on us. We're not doing 200 miles an hour on the interstate because the speed limit is 65, 70, whatever it may be, because of laws. And we also have regulations, let's say federal regulations that our company might have to comply with, let's say the Clean Water and Air Act, all the rules within our company and policies. We have the responsibility to follow these. Respect. We need to respect our counterparts, our team, our bosses. And when we negotiate, we need to do it in good faith. We're not trying to not trying to trick our counterpart in a negotiation. We're trying to understand them so we can know where they're coming from, and we can come up with a great solution that we've negotiated. Fairness, this is kind of hard for us to do, because we have our own internal unconscious favorites, favorite way of doing things, favorite food, preferences, all this kind of stuff is unconscious. Discrimination, we shouldn't do that anyway. It's actually federal law in certain cases, but your company wants to maintain a certain standard of fairness and anti-discrimination. So learn what your company's policy is or rules and follow them, and be fair. Give everybody a chance. Evaluate people on their character, on their capability, rather than you like them because you've gone out golfing with them or whatever. Or don't discriminate them because they're, I don't know, Irish or whatever, you fill in the blank. Don't discriminate based on that. Honesty. So don't be dishonest, because people will figure that out, and then that's going to tarnish your reputation. And especially if it's for personal gain, that's usually ethics will play a role in this. For example, don't accept a gift from a vendor over a certain dollar amount, because that might influence you to make a decision or favor them with business. So a lot of companies have ethics, a code of ethics that they have, and PMI as an organization has the same. So don't, just be honest with what you're doing, and you should be fine. So we'll go ahead and talk about incremental value in the next video. So hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions, send me an email, and we'll talk about it at our next class, or I'll reply to you depending on how you want it handled. So look forward to talking to you at the next one.